Story 1. The Man Who Watched Me. I live in northern Utah, on the edge of a small highway town nestled in the middle of nowhere. There's not much here, just a scattering of stores, truck stops, and a tired old motel that hugs the main road like it's been there forever. The rest of the place is all dirt roads that lead to private homes, thick patches of forest, and acres of empty, grassy fields. It was a typical day. I had just finished work. I work remotely, so I spend most of my time indoors. Around 6 p.m, I drove into town to grab some groceries. The highway's never too busy, so the stores are usually pretty empty. I parked in the far end of the lot, like I always do, and started shopping. As I walked down one of the aisles, I noticed a man watching me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I looked over at him just as he looked at me. But a few minutes later, in a completely different aisle, I noticed him again. He walked into the aisle, empty except for me, and stood just 5 or 6 feet to the side. Not browsing, not shopping, just standing there. I kept facing forward, pretending to be focused on picking out items, but I could see him from the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking around, he was looking at me. Trying to shake the tension, I gave a quick hi and continued shopping. He didn't respond. I left the aisle fast. It was weird, sure, but I just figured maybe he was a socially awkward traveler or some sleep-deprived trucker. I paid for my groceries and walked out. That's when I saw him again. He was standing between 2 parked cars, watching me. Still no groceries in hand. Still no sign he ever actually bought anything. I got in my car quickly and started driving home. The sun was nearly gone by then, and the dirt roads that led to my house were dark and silent. When I got home, I brought in the first couple of grocery bags. I ended up getting distracted by a phone call from my dad and spent a while chatting, but eventually I headed back outside to grab the rest. That's when I saw it. Far down the dirt road, parked awkwardly on the edge of my property, was a truck. Its lights were off. At first I thought maybe it was just a lost driver or someone pulling off the highway to sleep for free instead of paying for a motel. But it was on my property, and it definitely wasn't there when I got home. I kept my eye on the truck as I retrieved the last bags and went back inside. I opened the front curtain slightly to keep watch. Over the next hour or so, I calmed myself. The truck never moved. Maybe it really was just someone sleeping. Weird, but harmless. I spent another hour watching TV. Then I closed the curtains and went upstairs to bed. I fell asleep quickly, but somewhere around 2 or 3 a.m, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. As I crossed the hallway and opened the bathroom door, I heard a creak downstairs. I stopped. It was so distinct, a slow wooden creak that I'd never heard before in this house. Tried to recreate it by opening and closing the bathroom door again. Nothing. I stepped to the end of the hallway and looked down the stairs. The house was pitch black, except for a faint moonlight sneaking in through the kitchen window. That's when I saw it. A shadow, moving ever so slightly against the hallway wall downstairs. I couldn't tell if it was inside or if it was outside the back door and casting a reflection, but I felt it. Someone was there. I backed away slowly, returned to my bedroom and shut the door quietly, trying not to make a sound. I grabbed my phone and called the police, whispering as I explained what I saw. The next 5 minutes were dead quiet. I started doubting myself, but then I heard it, creaking. Again, slow, deliberate steps on the floor below. They walked into the living room, then silence. A minute later, flashing red and blue lights filled my front yard. That's when everything happened at once. The sound of someone running, heavy, frantic footsteps across the downstairs floor. The front door flew open as police charged inside, and not long after, they chased someone down through the fields behind my house. They caught him. It was the same man from the grocery store. He had been watching me, stalking me. He broke into my home while I was still awake, still walking around inside. He had a weapon on him. He told the officers he was trying to rob me, but he didn't take anything. He didn't even have a bag to put anything in. He never planned to steal. He knew I was home, and he was waiting, whatever he had in mind. I'm just glad I never found out. Story 2. Not the host. This happened last summer while I was on a long road trip across the country. I was taking my time getting back home after visiting relatives, driving a few hours a day, and stopping at different places just to make the journey feel like a vacation. This particular night, I had booked an Airbnb, a small, cozy cabin off a back road, about 2 hours from where I'd spent the day. The plan was simple: drive, eat, crash. The cabin was surrounded by flat land and spaced out pine trees. Someone had planted the trees in a perfectly straight row along the front, with a gravel driveway that cut between them. It looked peaceful, but something about it was also a little eerie. I parked, unlocked the padlock using the code the host emailed me, and stepped inside. The inside was actually pretty nice, clean, renovated, cozy. A stark contrast to the plain, rugged exterior. I hadn't brought much in since I was only staying for one night. I sat at the small table, opened up some fast food I'd picked up earlier, and just started to eat. Maybe 10 minutes in, there was a knock at the door. It startled me. I hadn't heard a car, no crunch of gravel, no footsteps. I opened the door slowly. A man was standing there. He looked about 40, bald head, scruffy beard with patches of grey. "Hi," he said with a strange smile. "Just stopping by to make sure you got in okay." I assumed he was the host. I told him everything was fine and thanked him. He nodded, said goodnight, and walked off into the darkness. No car engine, no sound of him walking away on the gravel. It was odd, but I figured maybe he lived on the property. Maybe there was another cabin nearby. Still, something felt off. He had this strong, earthy odor, like sweat and dirt, and something else I couldn't place. I went back inside, ate, took a shower. About 20 minutes later, I was in bed scrolling through my phone. That's when there was another knock at the door, harder this time. I froze. Why would he come back so soon? There hadn't been a call, no text, nothing. I crept into the living room. The knocking continued. I didn't want to answer. Instead, I called out from behind the door. "What do you need?" There was silence. Then, "Can you open the door, please? I just wanted to ask one more thing." His voice was softer this time, measured. I told him I wasn't opening the door unless it was an emergency. Then came complete silence. No footsteps, no sound of him walking away. After a full minute passed, I checked the window in the door. No one was there. I should have felt relieved. But instead, my chest tightened. He hadn't walked away. I would have heard him on the gravel. So where was he? And that's when I saw them. Eyes staring back at me through the side living room window. My body locked up. He had moved to the side of the cabin and was watching me through the glass. I ran to the bedroom and dialed 911. As I waited, I heard scratching, like he was trying to open the window. Then it hit me. If he was really the host, why was he trying to break in through the window? Police showed up within 10 minutes, but the man was gone, vanished. They contacted the actual host, He lived 3 hours away. Whoever that man was, he had lied. He never had a key, and whatever he wanted that night, it wasn't just to check in. Story 3, the cabin in Minnesota. It was spring break. I was 18, and my family had decided to take a trip to northern Minnesota. Just me, my mum, and my 7-year-old little brother. My mum had booked us a small cabin, not for luxury, but for the experience. She was even thinking of moving out to a smaller town one day, and this trip was partly to scout the area. We didn't know the cabin was so isolated. About 35 minutes from the nearest town, surrounded by woods and barely within cell service range. It took 10 hours to drive there. We arrived just as the sun was setting. The place looked like something out of a postcard. Golden light filtering through the trees, birds in the distance. But the cabin itself was old. Really old. It creaked. The floorboards felt hollow. The roof looked warped in places. It had a strange, almost uneasy atmosphere, like time had forgotten it, and maybe something else hadn't. We didn't unpack much that first night, and it wasn't long before the weirdness began. That night, after we settled in, my mum went to bed early. My little brother and I stayed up watching a DVD on the small, ancient TV in the corner of the living room. Around 10:30 p.m., I noticed something strange. The front porch light, which had been on since we arrived, began to flicker. Not like an electrical flicker, but like someone was walking in front of it, casting a shadow every few seconds. I looked through the front window. Nothing. No wind, no movement. The trees were still. The gravel driveway was empty. I figured maybe it was just a faulty bulb. I shut off the TV and tucked my brother into the pull-out couch. Then I double-checked all the doors. Everything was locked. I went to bed, but something woke me up a few hours later. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, like something was watching me. I lay frozen under the covers, my ears straining in the silence. Then I heard it. A soft creaking sound, not from the cabin, but from outside my bedroom window. It was slow, rhythmic, like footsteps, pacing. I gathered the courage to get out of bed. I tiptoed to the window and pulled the curtain aside just an inch. I didn't see anything at first, but as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw a man standing at the tree line. Just standing, facing the cabin. He wasn't moving, just staring. There was no flashlight, no phone light, just his outline, lit faintly by the moon. I backed away, heart racing. I grabbed the cabin phone, but it had no dial tone. Of course it didn't. I went to my mum's room, shook her awake, and whispered what I saw. She tried to stay calm. We went to the living room where my little brother was still asleep, and that's when we heard it. Footsteps on the porch, heavy, slow. My mom ran to the door and looked through the peephole. Then she froze. "There's someone out there," she whispered. "But I can't see his face." The man stood there for a long time. Then, a loud bang against the door. My brother jolted awake, crying. My mum grabbed the fireplace poker and stood guard by the door while I called 911 from my cell, praying I still had a signal, 1 bar, maybe 2. I managed to get through, told them everything. The dispatcher said it would take at least 30 minutes to get anyone to us. We turned off all the lights and sat in silence, clutching each other, listening. The banging stopped, but then we heard the crunch of gravel. He was walking around the cabin, circling it, trying doors, tapping on windows. It lasted forever. Then silence. Nothing. For 15 minutes, no sound at all. Just as we began to think maybe he'd left. There was a loud crack from the back of the house. The sound of glass breaking. He was inside. My mum shoved us into the bathroom and locked the door. We huddled in the dark, barely breathing. We could hear him moving. Slow, heavy steps through the kitchen. Closer, closer. Then, sirens, flashing lights, voices yelling. The footsteps stopped, doors slammed, more shouting. Then, silence again. An officer knocked on the bathroom door and helped us out. They had caught him, a man in his late 50s. No ID, no explanation. He had a hunting knife and a small bag filled with duct tape and rope. He never said a word to the police, just smiled. They never figured out who he was. No records, no missing persons match. Just a stranger, roaming the woods, waiting, watching, and we just happened to be the unlucky ones who chose that cabin.